Education and history are critical to the cultural development of any society, but a debate now rages in the US about what students should and shouldn't learn and what needs to be taught. Because there's currently a call from some quarters to actually ban certain books because of sexual content, racism, and gender identity. And those who want books banned say that they are offensive and needlessly graphic, and those who want them to stay say that it's because they paint a truthful portrait and help young people to see their place in the world. Well, joining us all the way from Texas is our US correspondent, Katie Dixon. Morning, Katie.
Morning, Michael. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Now, it seems madness to be even considering banning books. What's going on?
It does, and this isn't a new debate here in the US. It has been going on for a long time, but it's very relevant right now, and there's opinions on why it is so relevant right now. Interestingly enough, you have both Republicans and Democrats that are advocating for certain books to be banned, but it's not, the two parties against each other on certain things. It just depends on the books, I think. We touched on it a little bit last time, talking about the passing of the Queen and how history isn't taught over here because we're focusing on what is taught in school and the history and racism and things like that. And that ties in with certain books that are being banned as well. Like you said, some of these books are about the history that include racism, and those that want some of those books banned because of the racial slurs used in the books, not necessarily because of the history, but because of the words used that we don't want children, or we don't want to be using these days because it is offensive. So, and then we have the books that include very explicit sexual content. You've also got books on gender identity and things like that, and it's very in the forefront right now of what we should ban, what kids should and shouldn't be allowed to read in schools.
It seems odd as an outsider that America, of all places, where we hear so much about the right to free speech, it's actually enshrined in your constitution, seemingly become divided over the banning of books.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these books, from researching myself, are new books. There are some older books. To Kill a Mockingbird, we all know that book. But there's a lot of new books, and I think the thing that parents are concerned about when we see these, school board meetings going on with parents voicing their opinions and things like that, they feel that the writers, the publishers of these books are finding different ways to incorporate opinions that they don't believe is appropriate for children of a certain age. There is books that talk about two male penguins and how those two male penguins want to have a baby, but obviously they can't. So the zookeeper gives them an egg, and essentially it is talking about a gay couple and wanting to have a child. And it's not that these parents are necessarily against that. Everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, but they believe that making a book about that for such young children by using characters and animals and things like that, that is what they are working towards getting out of these schools. And then another issue is, how are these books getting into the schools? And that's what a lot of parents and conservatives want to know right now. And even locally here in my town, they're locking books up. So they've got these books that are on the banned list. They're actually in a locked cabinet. They're still at the school, but you have to be a certain age. Your parents have to come with you, a parent, to sign the book out if you want to get that book. So they're still available, but there's just different requirements to get them. But the interesting thing is that the schools are saying that they don't have time to read all these books that come through, and that it's on a third party person that encourages these books, or said this group of books is good to come into your school, put them in, and they're just getting in the library and they're not even realizing they're there. And that's the thing that a lot of parents are worried about. But like you said, on the flip side, the people that don't want books banned, they want children to know and to learn. And essentially that's the debate. What are we teaching our kids in schools? Do we stick to the basics, or do we open it all up?
They're not worried about their children becoming penguins, are they?
That's the least thing I'd be worried about if they want to be a penguin. But there is some very explicit wording in some of these books. Even as an adult myself, I'm shocked that some of these books are in these schools, even for a 17-year-old to read. Certainly now, as a mother myself, that is a conversation I want to have with my daughter. And again, this comes into, we didn't have sex education at the school I went to in Australia. Over here, some schools have it, some schools don't. Some schools you have to have a parent sign that you can be a part of that class and whatnot. And parents just don't want that right taken away from them to explain, whether it is gender identity, whether it is the LGBTQ community, whatever the case, racism, history. They want to be able to teach their children that, and it not be snuck into the schools. And that's the debate going on right now.
It seems confusing to me when we've got both sides, right and left, liberal and conservative, decrying the others' implementation of this, when we've just recently seen Salman Rushdie stabbed. And if you want a more stark example of who should be the adjudicator of what belongs in a book and what doesn't, that just shows where your ideology, your upbringing, and your experience can make one thing seem horrific and the other one seem tolerable. Do we risk slipping into that? Like, who becomes the adjudicator? As you rightfully said, parents should have that right, I believe, to explain things to the children, but do we hide it from them, or do we explain it to them?
And that's the question. Who teaches them this? I think that some of these books, they're arguing that they need to be read, they need to be vetted, and the schools are saying this third party is recommending these books, and the third party is saying we're not reading them, we're not recommending them. And so whose fault is it that these books are getting into the library? There are books out there that are telling the story of history, maybe not the correct way that many believe it was. I'm not one to say what history was. We know what we know based upon what we have learned so far. But in terms of racism and things like that, you can they don't want it to be a relevant topic right now. We want to move past that. And I think that's where the Democrats and the Republicans are coming together on certain things, because we don't want this to keep being a subject. We want to come together. We want to move past it. It is history. It is very important to know our history, but we don't want to still be arguing over it today. We want to come together and move forward. In terms of the LGBTQ community, they want people to know more about their community. They want it to be a norm, I guess, as you would say, and rightfully so, if that's how they feel. But I think this is a debate that's just going to continue. In the more red states, books are being banned more so than the blue states. And like I said, here in Texas, a lot of those books are still available, but they're just locked up. And truly, perhaps they need to take a look at how things in these books are being explained. There is talk of suicide. There is talk of, there is a book on the Hitler, Nazis, and everything like that. But it's about a cat who is Hitler and the mice, and talks about throwing mice up against the wall and killing them, and that there were 2 and 3-year-old kids screaming. And it's like, just because it's a cat and a mouse, that is very intense and horrible to think of. And I think whether it's age restrictions, whether it's removing certain books from the classroom, history is important, but it's how we tell it, and the age, I think, that's going to be the big debate here.
Yeah, one of the important things, coming from my background in developmental psychology, what we're looking at isn't as important as where we're looking from. So the developmental appropriate age of a child to look at something like, they will take something completely different away from it. Whereas you might think, well, we're teaching them how bad Hitler was. Well, a 3 or 4-year-old is just going to see mice being murdered and be horrified of it, and not take away the bigger concept of
right. And perhaps might think it's okay to kill mice. No one wants a mouse in their house, but we it's that translation. And I think that's where people that are against it, they don't want this twisted. They don't want people that want this in schools, finding new ways and sneaking it in there to get to their kids. If we're going to teach them that, let's look at it. Let's come to an appropriate age for these students and go from there.
Yeah, I think we need to focus on teaching them how to think, not what to think.
Absolutely.
All right, Katie Dixon, all the way from Texas. Good luck with Cyclone Ian. Hope you're safe.
We are safe here, but praying for everyone on the East Coast.
Right. See you, Katie.
Thank you. See ya.